Welcome to New York, 1920. Bullets, booze, and broads. The world of Damon Runyon, a writer with more than a share of stories to tell. The First World War gave our friend Damon his start in the reporting game, and it was a cinch that his dodging bullets and bombs would come in handy when he took his first job stateside, as chief sports writer for the New York American. Now, being a sports writer in New York in the 20s and 30s is by no means a job for the faint of heart, since gambling was a way of life for the various guys who haunted the horse tracks and ball games. These said guys were, to be sure, less honest than somewhat. They had a tendency in their spare time to be buying and selling merchandise, said merchandise more often than not known by the name of liquor. Now, this is a time in our great country when liquor was illegal. So the local distributors developed novel ways of dealing with the situation, resorting, for instance, to filling people full of slugs, tailoring cement swimsuits for them, and deep-sixing the unattractive results in the East River, and generally making a nuisance out of themselves. Now, our friend Damon spends nearly 30 years of his life walking up and down Broadway, soaking up the atmosphere, and ends up writing many a great story set among the low life of Broadway. He writes about guys, dolls, dudes, malls, shysters, crap shooters, speakeasies, and a certain sort of icing, which has nothing to do with the baking profession. His characters are more colorful than somewhat, with names like Harry the Horse, the Lemon Drop Kid, Frisco Shine, and Squirt McHugh. Starting tonight, those nice big hats at Channel 4, with a little help from me, are giving you a chance to hear 10 of his best tales. So, grab yourself a shot of rye, for medicinal purposes, of course. The world of Damon Runyon is coming at you, all rods blazing.
Give me some of the hots. Thanks, buddy.
Hey, enjoy the holidays, huh?
Come right on through, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, what are you walking in front of my car for, huh?
Hey, Merry Christmas, huh?
Now, one time, it comes on Christmas. In fact, it is the evening before Christmas. And I am in Good Time Charlie Bernstein's Speakeasy in West 47th Street, wishing Charlie a Merry Christmas and having a hot Tom and Jerry with him. This hot Tom and Jerry is an old-time drink that is once used by one and all in this country to celebrate Christmas with. And in fact, it is once so popular that many people think Christmas is invented only to furnish an excuse for hot Tom and Jerry. Of course, this is by no means true. But anyone will tell you that there's nothing that brings out the true holiday spirit like hot Tom and Jerry. And I hear that since Tom and Jerry goes out of style in the United States, the holiday spirit is never quite the same. The reason Tom and Jerry goes out of style is because it is necessary to use rum in one thing and another in making Tom and Jerry. And naturally, when rum becomes illegal in this country, Tom and Jerry is also against the law, because rum is something that is very hard to get around town these days. For a while, some people try making hot Tom and Jerry without putting rum in it. But somehow, it never has the same old holiday spirit. So nearly everybody finally gives up in disgust. And this is not surprising, as making Tom and Jerry is by no means child's play. In fact, it takes quite an expert to make a good Tom and Jerry. And in the days when it is not illegal, a good hot Tom and Jerry maker commands good wages and many friends. Now, of course, Good Time Charlie and I are not using rum in the Tom and Jerry we are making, as we do not wish to do anything illegal. What we are using is rye whiskey that Good Time Charlie gets on a doctor's prescription from a drugstore, as we are personally drinking this hot Tom and Jerry, and naturally we are not foolish enough to use any of Good Time Charlie's own rye in it. The prescription for the rye whiskey comes from old Doc Moggs, who prescribes it for Good Time Charlie's rheumatism, in case Charlie happens to get rheumatism. As Doc Moggs says, there is nothing better for rheumatism than rye whiskey, especially if it's made up in a hot Tom and Jerry. In fact, old Doc Moggs comes around and has a few sidles of hot Tom and Jerry with us for his own rheumatism. He comes around during the afternoon. For Good Time Charlie and I start making this Tom and Jerry early in the day, so as to be sure to have enough to last us over Christmas. Now, it is long towards 6 o'clock, and the holiday spirit is practically 100%. Well, as Good Time Charlie and I are expressing our holiday sentiments to each other over our hot Tom and Jerry, and I'm trying to think up the poem about the night before Christmas and all through the house, which I know will interest Charlie no little, all of a sudden, there's a big knock at the front door. And when Charlie opens the door, who comes in carrying a large package under one arm but a guy by the name of Dancing Dan? This Dancing Dan is a good-looking young guy who always seems well-dressed, and he is called by the name of Dancing Dan because he has a great hand for dancing round and about the dolls in nightclubs and any other spots where there's any dancing. In fact, Dan never seems to be doing anything else, although I hear rumors that when he is not dancing, he's carrying on in a most illegal manner at one thing and another. But of course, you can always hear rumors in this town about anybody. And personally, I am rather fond of Dancing Dan, as he always seems to be getting a great belt out of life. Anybody in town will tell you that Dancing Dan is a guy with no Barnaby whatever in him. And in fact, he has about as much gizzard as anybody around. Although I wish to say, I always question his judgment in dancing so much with Miss Muriel O'Neill, who works in the Half Moon nightclub. And the reason I question his judgment in this respect is because everybody knows that Miss Muriel O'Neill is very well thought of by Heine Schmitz. And Heine Schmitz is not such a guy as will take kindly to anybody dancing more than once and a half with a doll that he thinks well of. This Heine Schmitz is a very influential citizen of Harlem, where he has large interests in beer and other business enterprises. And is by no means violating any confidence to tell you that Heine Schmitz will just as soon blow your brains out as look at you. In fact, a year sooner. Anyway, he's not a guy to monkey with. And many citizens take the trouble to advise Dancing Dan that he is not only a way out of line in dancing with Miss Muriel O'Neill, but that he is knocking his own price down to where he's no price at all. But Dancing Dan only laughs ha-ha and goes on dancing with Miss Muriel O'Neill anytime he gets a chance. Oh. And Good Time Charlie says he does not blame him for that, as Miss Muriel O'Neill is so beautiful that he will be dancing with her himself no matter what. If he's 5 years younger and can get his Roscoe out as fast as in the days when he runs with Patty the Link and other fast guys. Well, anyway, as Dancing Dan comes in, he weighs up the joint in one quick peek, and then he tosses the package he's carrying into the corner where it goes plunk, as if there's something very heavy in it. And then he steps up to the bar and wishes to know what Charlie and me are drinking. Well, naturally, we start boosting the hot Tom and Jerry in one. And he says he'll take a crack at it with us. And after one crack, Dancing Dan says he'll have another crack. And Merry Christmas to us with it. And the first thing anybody knows is a couple of hours later, and we're still having cracks at the hot Tom and Jerry with Dancing Dan. And Dancing Dan, he says he never drinks anything so soothing in his life. In fact, Dancing Dan says he will recommend Tom and Jerry to everybody he knows. Only he does not know anybody good enough for Tom and Jerry, except maybe Miss Muriel O'Neill, and she does not drink anything but drugstore Rhine. Well, several times while we are drinking this Tom and Jerry, customers come to the door of Good Time Charlie's little speakeasy and knock. But by now, Charlie is commencing to be afraid they will wish Tom and Jerry too, and he does not feel we'll have enough for ourselves. So he hangs out a sign which says, "Closed on account of Christmas." And the only one he'll let in is a guy by the name of Ookie. He was nothing but an old rum-dum. He was going around all week dressed up like Santa Claus and carrying a sign advertising Mo Lewinsky's clothing joint around on 6th Avenue. This Ookie is still wearing his Santa Claus outfit when Charlie lets him in. And the reason Charlie permits such a character as Ookie in this joint is because Ookie does the porter work for Charlie when he's not Santa Claus for Mo Lewinsky, such as sweeping out and washing the glasses and one thing and another. Well, it's about 9:30 when Ookie comes in, and his puppies are aching. And he's all petered out generally, so we invite him to have a few mugs of hot Tom and Jerry with us, and wish him plenty of Merry Christmas. But old Ookie is not accustomed to Tom and Jerry, and after about the 5th mug, he folds up in a chair and goes right to sleep on us. He's wearing a pretty good Santa Claus makeup, what with a nice red suit trimmed with white cotton and a wig and a false nose and long white whiskers and a sack stuffed with Excelsior on his back. And if I do not know Santa Claus is not apt to be such a guy as will snore loud enough to rattle the windows, I will think Ookie is Santa Claus sure enough. Well, we forget Ookie and let him go to sleep and go on with our hot Tom and Jerry. And in the meantime, we try to think up a few songs appropriate to Christmas. And finally, Dancing Dan finally renders My Dad's Dinner Pail in a nice baritone and very loud, while I do a first-rate Will You Love Me in December as You Do in May. But personally, I always think Good Time Charlie Bernstein is a little out of line trying to sing a hymn in Jewish on such an occasion, and it causes words between us. Dancing Dan and Charlie and I continue drinking our hot Tom and Jerry, and with each Tom and Jerry we are wishing one another a very Merry Christmas, and sometimes a very Happy New Year. Although, of course, this does not go for Good Time Charlie as yet, because Charlie has his New Year separate from Dancing Dan and me. By and by, we take to waking Ookie up in his Santa Claus outfit and offering him more hot Tom and Jerry, and wishing him Merry Christmas. But Ookie only gets sore and calls us names. So we can see he does not have the right holiday spirit in him, and let him alone until along about midnight, when Dancing Dan wishes to see how he looks as Santa Claus. So, Good Time Charlie and I help Dancing Dan pull off Ookie's outfit and put it on Dan. And this is easy, as Ookie only has the Santa Claus outfit on over his ordinary clothes. And even he does not wake up when we're undressing him with a Santa Claus uniform. Well, I wish to say I see many a Santa Claus in my time, but I never see a better looking Santa Claus than Dancing Dan, especially after he gets the wig and white whiskers fixed just right. And we put a sofa pillow down his pants to give Dancing Dan a nice fat stomach such as Santa Claus is bound to have. In fact, after Dancing Dan looks at himself in a mirror a while, he is greatly pleased with his appearance, while Good Time Charlie is practically hysterical. Although personally, I'm commencing to resent Charlie's interest in Santa Claus and Christmas generally, as he by no means has any claim on these matters. But then, I remember Charlie furnishes the hot Tom and Jerry, so I am more tolerant towards him. Well, Charlie finally says, "It is a great pity we do not know where there are some stockings hung up somewhere, because then," he says, "you can go around and stuff things in these stockings, as I always hear this is the main idea of a Santa Claus. But I do not suppose anybody in this section has any stockings hung up, or if they have, the chances are they are so full of holes they will not hold anything. Anyway," Charlie says, "even if there are any stockings hung up, we do not have anything to stuff in them, although personally, I will gladly donate a few pints of scotch." Well, I am pointing out that we have no reindeer, and that a Santa Claus is bound to look like a terrible sap if he goes around without any reindeer. But Charlie's remarks seem to give Dancing Dan an idea. Why? Dancing Dan says, I know where a stocking is hung up. It is hung up at Miss Muriel O'Neill's flat over here in West 49th Street. This stocking is hung up by nobody but a party by the name of Gamma O'Neill, who is Miss Muriel O'Neill's grandmama. Gamma O'Neill is going on 90-odd, and Miss Muriel O'Neill tells me she cannot hold out much longer, what with one thing and another, including being a little childish in spots. Now, Dancing Dan says, I remember Miss Muriel O'Neil is telling me just the other night how Gamma O'Neill hangs up her stocking on Christmas Eve all her life. And I judge from what Miss Muriel O'Neil says that the old doll always believes Santa Claus will come along some Christmas and fill the stocking full of beautiful gifts. But Miss Muriel O'Neil personally always takes a few gifts home and pops them into the stocking to make Gamma O'Neill feel better. But of course, these gifts are nothing much, because Miss Muriel O'Neil is very poor and proud and also good and will not take a dime off of anybody. And I can lick the guy who says she will. Now, Dancing Dan goes on, it seems that while Gamma O'Neill is very happy to get whatever she finds in her stockings on Christmas morning, she does not understand why Santa Claus is not more liberal. And Miss Muriel O'Neil is saying to me that she only wishes she can give Gamma O'Neill one real big Christmas before the old doll puts her checks back in the rack. So, here is a job for us. Miss Muriel O'Neil and her grandmama live all alone in this flat over in West 49th Street. And at such an hour as this, Miss Muriel O'Neil is bound to be working. And the chances are Gamma O'Neill is sound asleep, and we will just hop over there, and Santa Claus will fill up her stocking with beautiful gifts. Well, I say, I do not see where we are going to get any beautiful gifts at this time of night, or with the stores being closed, unless we dash into an all-night drugstore and buy a few bottles of perfume and a bum toilet set, as guys always do when they forget about their ever-loving wives until after store hours on Christmas Eve. But Dancing Dan says never mind about this. But let us have a few more Tom and Jerry's first. So, we have a few more Tom and Jerry's. And then Dancing Dan picks up the package he heaves into the corner and dumps most of the Excelsior out of a Ookie Santa Claus sack and puts the bundle in. And Good Time Charlie turns out all the lights but one and leaves a bottle of scotch on the table in front of Ookie as a Christmas gift. And away we go. Personally, I regret very much leaving the hot Tom and Jerry. But then, I'm also very enthusiastic about going along to help Dancing Dan play Santa Claus. While Good Time Charlie is practically overjoyed, as it is the first time in his life Charlie has ever mixed up in so much holiday spirit. In fact, nothing will do Charlie but that we stop in a couple of spots and have a few drinks to Santa Claus's health. And these visits are a big success, although everybody is much surprised to see Charlie and me with Santa Claus, especially Charlie, although nobody recognizes Dancing Dan. But of course, there are no hot Tom and Jerry's in these spots we visit. And we have to drink whatever is on hand. And personally, I will always believe that the noggin I have on me afterwards comes of mixing the drinks we get in these spots with my Tom and Jerry. Oh, as we go up Broadway, headed for 49th Street, we are somewhat embarrassed when a lot of little kids going home with their parents from a late Christmas party somewhere gather about Santa Claus with shouts of childish glee, and some of them wish to climb up Santa Claus's legs. Well, naturally, Santa Claus gets a little peevish and calls them a few names. And one of the parents comes up and wishes to know, what is the idea of Santa Claus using such language? And Santa Claus takes a punch at the parent. All of which is no doubt most astonishing to the little kids who have an idea of Santa Claus as being a very kindly old guy. But of course they do not know about Dancing Dan mixing the liquor we get in these spots we visit with his Tom and Jerry, or they will understand how even Santa Claus can lose his temper. Well, finally we arrive in front of the place where Dancing Dan says Miss Muriel O'Neill and her grandmama live, and up the stairs we climb, till finally we come to a door at the top floor that has a little card in the slot that says O'Neill. So we know we reach our destination. Dancing Dan first tries the knob, and right away the door opens, and we are in a little 2 or 3 room flat with not much furniture in it. And what furniture there is very poor. One single gas jet is burning near a bed in a room just off the one the door opens into. And by this light, we see a very old doll is sleeping on the bed. So we judge this is nobody but Gamma O'Neill. On her face is a large smile, as if she is dreaming of something pleasant. On a chair at the head of the bed is hung a long black stocking. And it seems to be such a stocking that is often patched and mended. So I can see what Miss Muriel O'Neill tells Dancing Dan about her grandmama hanging up her stockings is really true. Although up to this time, I have my doubts. Well, I'm only to pack in it after one gander at the old doll, especially as Good Time Charlie is commencing a prowl around the flat to see if there's a chimney where Santa Claus can come down, and is knocking things over. But Dancing Dan stands looking down at Gamma O'Neill for a long time. Finally, he unslings the sack on his back and takes out his package and unties this package. And all of a sudden, out pops a raft of big diamond bracelets and diamond rings and diamond brooches and diamond necklaces. And I do not know what all else in the way of diamonds. And Dancing Dan and I begin stuffing these diamonds into the stocking, and Good Time Charlie pitches in and helps us. There are enough diamonds to fill the stocking to the muzzle. And it is no small stocking at that. And I judge a Gamma O'Neill has a pretty fair set of bunting sticks when she is young. In fact, there are so many diamonds that we have enough left over to make a nice little pile on the chair after we fill the stocking plumb up, leaving a nice diamond-studded vanity case sticking out the top, where we figure it'll hit Gamma O'Neill's eye when she wakes up. And it is not until I get out in the fresh air again that all of a sudden I remember seeing large headlines in the afternoon papers about a 500 G's stick-up in the afternoon of one of the biggest diamond merchants in Maiden Lane while he is sitting in his office. And I also recall once hearing rumors that Dancing Dan is one of the best lone-hand get-em-up guys in the world. Naturally, I commence to wonder if I'm in proper company when I am with Dancing Dan, even if he is Santa Claus. So I leave him on the next corner arguing with Good Time Charlie about whether they ought to go and find some more presents somewhere and look for other stockings to stuff, and I hasten on home and go to bed. The next day, I find I have such a noggin that I do not care to stir around. And in fact, I do not stir around much for a couple of weeks. Then one night, I drop around to Good Time Charlie's little speakeasy and ask Charlie what he's doing. Well, Charlie says, many things are doing. And personally, I'm greatly surprised I did not see you at Gamma O'Neill's wake. You know Gamma O'Neill leaves this wicked old world a couple of days after Christmas, and Miss Muriel O'Neill states that Doc Moggs claims it is at least a day after she is entitled to go. But she is sustained by great happiness on finding a stocking filled with beautiful gifts on Christmas morning. According to Miss Muriel O'Neill, Charlie says, Gamma O'Neill dies practically convinced that there is a Santa Claus. Although, of course, Miss Muriel O'Neill does not tell her the real owner of the gifts. An all-right guy by the name of Shapiro leaves the gifts with her after Miss Muriel O'Neill notifies him of finding the same. It seems, Charlie says, this Shapiro is a tender-hearted guy who was willing to help keep Gamma O'Neill with us a little longer when Doc Moggs says leaving the gifts with her will do it. So, Charlie says, everything is quite all right, as the coppers cannot figure anything except that maybe a rascal who takes the gifts from Shapiro gets conscience-stricken and leaves them in the first place he can, and Miss Muriel O'Neill receives a 10 G's reward for finding the gifts and returning them. And Charlie says, I hear Dancing Dan is in San Francisco and is figuring on reforming and becoming a dancing teacher so he can marry Miss Muriel O'Neill. And of course, we all hope and trust she never learns of the details of Dancing Dan's career. Well, it is Christmas Eve a year later that I run into a guy by the name of Shotgun Sam, who was a very, very obnoxious character indeed, and who was mobbed up with Heine Schmitz, the guy who was daffy over Miss Muriel O'Neill. Well, 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 Shotgun says, the last time I see you is another Christmas Eve like this, and you are coming out of Good Time Charlie's joint, and you certainly have your pots on. Well, Shotgun, I say, I am sorry you get such a wrong impression of me, but the truth is, on the occasion you speak of, I am suffering from a dizzy feeling in my head. It is all right with me, Shotgun says. I have a tip this guy Dancing Dan is in Good Time Charlie's the night I see you, and Mocky Morgan and Gunner Jack and me are casing the joint, because Heine Schmitz is all sawed up at Dan over some doll, although of course it is all right now, as Heine has another doll. Anyway, he says, we never get to see Dancing Dan. We watch the joint from 6:30 in the evening until daylight Christmas morning, and nobody goes in and out all night but old Ookie, the Santa Claus guy, in his Santa Claus makeup, and nobody comes out except you and Good Time Charlie and old Ookie. Well, Shotgun says, it is a great break for Dancing Dan. He never goes in or comes out of Good Time Charlie's at that, because we are waiting for him on the second floor front of the building across the way with some nice little sawed-offs, and they're under orders from Heine, not the miss. Well, Shotgun, I say, Merry Christmas. Well, all right, Shotgun says, Merry Christmas. Whoa!
Next Saturday, Mike McShane reveals the fate of a man on the run from an angry mob in the old doll's house. The second of Damon Runyon's Broadway stories at the later time of 11:35.
Of Damon